It is of the hour, so we'll call our meeting to order. Appreciate everybody being here this evening. And at this time, we'll have our invocation, which I will do. Let's bow our heads. Lord, we just praise you so much for your kind and merciful intentions toward us, Lord. We just thank you for leading us and guiding us in the service that we perform for the citizens of Williamston. We just ask that your wisdom and grace will be upon us, Lord. Your calming spirit and peace will preside over our meeting tonight. We just thank you for all the bountiful blessings that you bless our small town with. Just ask that you go with us tonight and bless each one of us as we proceed in the town's business. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Let's have the pledge. If everybody stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May be seated. Before we begin our business tonight, we did have a unexpected health issue with one of our members of council, Dad, and so I was wanting to know if Rocky would give us an update on his dad tonight.
Yes, appreciate everybody's thoughts, prayers, and concerns. Dad had his third procedure this morning, and he is now just has pulled in at home resting comfortably. So we appreciate. So my family and I definitely covet your prayers and concerns. Thank you.
Thanks, Rocky. All right, moving on, we will have a motion for approval of our minutes from our previous meeting.
So moved.
So moved. We have a second by Councilman Harvell. All in favor? Thank you. Minutes are approved. At this time, we will hear any public comment.
Take my mask off while I'm talking.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk to you tonight. Thank you all for your service. I know y'all have hard decisions and things y'all have to do a lot of times. I just want you to consider an issue that I'm going to bring to your attention tonight. I live just outside the city limits of Williamston, but I volunteer and I try to help the town all I can. I love the town and love what's best for the town, love growth in the town. As a realtor for coming up on 30 years, nothing is more important to me and my business than residential growth. That's my bread and butter. That's how I make my living. However, within the last month, I've tried to sell a property inside the city limits and one just outside the city limits. The one inside the city limits, there was no water or sewer available for. This is a family who had for years owned this property and been paying property taxes. So to say that they were upset is an understatement. The one outside, the city water was supposed to be available in the subdivision. We finally got that worked out, but that was a little bit of a to-do as well. Then I find out that there's a new development coming to town on property that the town owns. So I have to go back to my sellers and I have to explain to them why water and sewer is available on a property for a new development that the town owns and not available on a property that they own. That puts me in a tough position. As I said, residential development is ever so important, not just to me, to the town, to everything. I was talking to an attorney in Powdersville a few months ago, and he said that with the way Greenville's busting at the seams and Powdersville is overrun, we are next in line. It's just before happening here. But his advice to me was, you guys better be ready. With what's happened to me in the last month, I am extremely concerned if we're ready or not. If this infrastructure is going to support the growth. And if it doesn't, they're going to jump right over us and go someplace else. So to me, it's almost irresponsible to put the cart before the horse and worry about new development until we can develop what we've already got here and until we can supply to the taxpayers who have been paying taxes for years and years the basic services that should be provided to them. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention and ask you to please consider the infrastructure before we consider new development.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Roberta.
Mayor, if you don't mind, Roberta, would you mind telling me what those locations were, particularly the one inside the city and the one
Green
outside?
Street. three lots, and they back up to Hamilton Hills,
Okay, and where was the other one outside the city?
on Saluda Road. It's just on the other side of the railroad tracks.
And Green had no water or sewer?
Neither. Isn't that correct? That it was?
That's correct, yeah, those lots do not have water or sewer availability. And, but exactly to your point, Roberta, exactly what we are doing, we're building to the infrastructure we have. And so that's where we're at with this new development. We've got infrastructure available that will add new homes and a tax base for the town that will allow us to have funds to develop more infrastructure. But the truth is that we need to develop what we have. And that's what we're developing is not lots we have, but infrastructure we have. So we made a big investment as a town in the existing infrastructure. That was, a lot of that was put in as much as 85 years ago, and we're replacing some of that. Some of it was 50 years ago. Some of it was 20-something years ago. But the infrastructure's in the ground now, and that money is spent. So the wise thing to do is to develop around the existing infrastructure, and that's the direction we're going. So.
And I understand that, but then I also understand from a seller's perspective, as somebody who's been paying property taxes and their families own this land for years and years, when they're told that they can't, essentially they can't sell their property because nothing can be done on it, and they've been paying all these taxes all these years, then they're sitting back, they're saying, well, doesn't it seem mighty suspicious that the town can make it available for what they're wanting to develop, but it's not available to what we want to develop. And this isn't a huge, $1 million deal that I'm talking about. This is individuals that own these lots, and it was a small price. I mean, under $25,000. So it wasn't like they were making their life's fortune and they're not going to be able to eat and sustain their lifestyle if they don't sell these lots. It was just a hard blow to know that all these taxes have been paid. And it was my understanding that there's grants that can be written that could help completely redo the infrastructure of the town. And so my suggestion would be maybe we need a grant writer that's writing every grant that's available and just read, because when Greenville moves this direction, if we're not ready, and Belton is, or whatever next town is, they're going to jump right over us, and they're going to get the Walmart grocery stores, and they're going to get everything instead of us. And that makes no sense, because Williamston's a great place to be.
It certainly is, Roberta. I appreciate you mentioning that. We appreciate your comments this evening. Any other public comment? Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll move over and make a special report. I've been in touch with Diane Lawless, and I'd like to report tonight that we are going to forgo Boo in the Park. We will not have that as an event in October. So with much regrets, we always look forward to all of our events, and we've had some really good events. But Diane and her team just feel like it's not safe to do this event, and we're going to forego that this year. Along with that, though, they do want to know that we are making plans for our Christmas park. So everybody should look forward to our Christmas park, and we're going to probably have some variance in how we're going to do that this year. But we've heard Santa's coming to town, and we want to make sure he has a place to be when he gets here. So good news and bad news on that. At this time, we'll move forward with our presentation from Green Finney for the audit presentation, our annual audit report.
Clicker that you want me to use.
I got you covered. Just look at me and wink when you want me to go.
All right. Well, hopefully it will become apparent.
There you go.
So I'm Ken Meadows. I'm a partner with Green Finney. And we are honored to continue doing your audit this year and everything. So as our custom is, I'll go through a PowerPoint that kind of summarizes the financial statements. Y'all should have a copy of the financial statements. And if you've got any questions as I go through, feel free to stop me and let me know, or ask away at the end of my presentation. Or as you're going through the financial statements some other time later, if you've got questions, please give me a call or email me, and I'll do my best to answer them. So anyway, getting going, one of the first things you get to in the financial statements is our opinion, and it outlines what we are responsible for and what the town is responsible for. And just to remind you, the town is responsible for the internal controls of the town. So y'all are should periodically be assessing your risk and making sure your internal controls are sufficient to address those risks. And that includes the risk of fraud. The other thing that you're responsible for is the accounting system that underlies the financial statements. You're responsible that it's accurate and proper and complete, and that the financial statements are proper and complete. Our opinion, on the next slide you'll see, is to provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are materially correct. So it's reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance, and there's the concept of materiality. I forgot to wink. And so, you know, when we're testing, we do a sampling approach. We may look at stuff over a certain scope. We don't test every transaction. So, and then also, it's not a forensic audit. A lot of times when you hear of audit, you think of a forensic audit that's here to design to find fraud. That's not really what our audit is designed to be. It's a financial statement audit. A forensic audit goes into much more detail in specific areas. So, and then finally, if you read the opinion, you'll see that it's got an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you can get. It's the one that the town usually gets and most cities and towns get. So. Moving on, looking at the general fund, you'll see the general fund balance this year decreased about $300,000 down to about $1.9 million. And we'll discuss the reasons for that in a few slides. Hopefully it becomes evident when we discuss revenues and expenditures. Of that $1.9 million, about $100,000 of that is restricted for Envision Williamston and then the cemetery fund. And then you'll see on the next slide that the unassigned fund balance was about $1.8 million this year, and that's a decrease of about $300,000 as well. To put that into perspective, the unassigned fund balance is about 53% of actual expenditures and 62% of 2021 budgeted expenditures. And to put that into perspective, the GFO rate, which is the Governmental Financial Officers Association, recommends a minimum of 16.7%. That's about 2 months. I think y'all always try to at least probably have at least 3 months there for a town your size would probably be a good recommendation. So y'all got still a pretty healthy fund balance, even though you ate into it this year. Still feel pretty comfortable with where you're at. So. And then the next slide you'll see just kind of reminds you of why you want to have a adequate fund balance. Some of it's due to cash flows. We're looking at June 30th. You've still got 6 more months of operations to fund before property taxes come in and business licenses and franchise fees. So you got to have enough cash to carry you for the next 6 months. So that's the first reason. The second reason is just as you would any savings account, unplanned emergencies, future repairs and maintenance, capital things. So, and then finally, as we're dealing, you know, the economy now, who knows where it is going to end up or how we're going to be impacted. Certainly, we've been negatively impacted this past year, and going forward, I imagine it will still probably be negative for a little while. So. Those are just some reasons to have a good fund balance. If you look at the next slide, you'll see the revenues for the general fund were almost $3.1 million this year, and you'll see that most of that comes from property taxes, almost $1.1 million, and then you've got a mix of other revenue sources as well, ranging from franchise fees, licenses and permits, down to hospitality taxes and sanitation fees. That's a decrease this year of about $250,000, and driving that decrease is hospitality taxes about $33,000. That was impacted by COVID-19. A decrease in licenses and permits of about $49,000. A decrease in grant revenues of about $138,000. Last year, y'all got a FEMA grant, which probably, you know, those don't occur every year, just as disaster strike and everything. And then Envision Williamston had a significant grant last year as well that didn't repeat this year. So Looking at revenues compared to budget, they actually came in higher than budgeted by about $152,000. And you'll see there it's kind of spread over a number of revenue items. All came in a little bit higher than budgeted. So comparing that to expenses, you'll see expenses were higher by about $300,000 to $350,000. They came in at almost $3.5 million, $3.4 to $3.5 million. You'll see most of that is spent on public safety, almost $1.5 million, $800,000 in general government. Then you've got public works and recreation making up the rest of it with a small amount in capital outlay. That's an increase from the prior year of about $369,000. And that was the general government increased $72,000. Recreation actually decreased just due to the less participation because of COVID-19. But public safety increased $47,000. Capital outlay increased $160,000. And then public works increased $134,000. So, compared to budget, y'all are about $500,000 over budget. Although I will say that a lot of these overages, which we've detailed down here, hopefully you can read it, they were approved by council. So in some respects, they were really probably should have been fed into the budget and everything, but technically the budget didn't get revised. But council was aware of most of these, which we detailed up here. I'll just kind of run through those. In the general government, y'all had $30,000 in property purchases. I think y'all purchased 2 or 3 plots of land. Y'all had some sidewalk repairs and for $50,000, and then $50,000 in a paving match, which was approved but not budgeted. Then you had $80,000 in emergency street repairs and $44,000 in ARC grant expenses that weren't budgeted. So y'all got that grant, and then y'all had the related expenses for it. Public Works was $93,000 over budget, and you'll see that y'all had paving and street repairs for $200,000 that council approved, but weren't budgeted. And then capital outlay was $164,000 over budget. Y'all purchased a flatbed truck for about $88,000 with the FEMA grant money, and then police vehicles were purchased for $48,000, and a fire vehicle was purchased for $30,000. And I don't think either those were budgeted. So that kind of gives you a flavor for the expenses that really drove y'all being over budget, and which ones were approved by council and which ones may not have been. So that kind of covers the general fund. Looking at the water fund for the year, you'll see water fund revenues were comparable to the prior year. Operating expenses went up about $200,000 from the prior year. Most of that was driven by increased operating supplies and increased depreciation. The water fund still had an operating income of $92,000. That was lower than the prior year of $263,000. And then you also had a non-operating loss of $20,000 compared to non-operating income in the prior year of $408,000. And the big thing there is that last year the water fund had a grant for about $439,000 to put in some water line projects. So that kind of skews that. You've got the revenue, but then you capitalize those improvements, so you don't really get the expense until you get the depreciation, which you'll see. You got decreased depreciation this year due to that as well. So it kind of trickles in over the life of those projects. The change in net position was $72,000 this year, so a positive change in net position compared to $671,000 last year. Like I said, that was really driven by that big $400,000 grant that you got last year. So net position was about $3.6 million, and unrestricted net position was close to $1.5 million. So all in all, I'd say the water fund's in good shape there. So on the next slide, we'll look at the sewer fund. The sewer fund revenues were comparable to the prior year. Operating expenses actually decreased from the prior year. Y'all actually had lower repairs and maintenance this year by about $100,000. And so that resulted in operating income this year of $66,000 compared to an operating loss of $27,000 last year. You also received a grant this year for about $500,000 for ongoing sewer projects, and that drove non-operating income of $400,000 this year compared to a non-operating loss of about $100,000 last year. So all in all, the change in net position for the year was about $474,000 compared to a loss of $120,000 last year. And like I said, that was really driven by the grant revenue of $500,000 this year. Net position was almost $7.5 million. Of that, $400,000 is restricted for debt service. And then you've got about $1.2 million in unrestricted net position. So the sewer fund is improving. It's been making slight improvements over the past few years, but both the water fund and the sewer fund, as y'all have heard in the public comment, there's a lot of infrastructure needs, and they're expensive once you start undertaking them. So you need a big fund balance there going forward. So flipping over to the next page, this slide here summarizes the government-wide financial statements. The government-wide financial statements are the ones that they combine the general fund, the water fund, the sewer fund, put on the capital assets, and then also include the debt, and kind of view it as if it was a business, the town was a business. So if you did that, you'd see you had assets of about $20.6 million. Most of that would be in capital assets, the buildings, vehicles, and land of about $14.5 million. And then you'd have a little bit more than $500 million in cash and investments. Those would be offset by liabilities of about $8.5 million. $4.4 million of that would be long-term obligations, primarily debt, outstanding debt. And then you've got $3.2 million in a net pension liability. And that's, as we've discussed in previous years, that's really your allocation of the state's unfunded deficit in their pension. So technically and legally, y'all don't actually have to pay that. Where it manifests itself is that the pension charges higher rates for the employees each year, and it's been going up for the past few years and probably will increase in the next couple of years as well. So, but that's really not really your liability, but for accounting rules, that's why it gets stuck on here. So. Net position, you'll see, was $12.5 million. Most of that would be your net investment in capital assets, almost $10 million. You've got about $500,000 in restricted net position, and then your unrestricted net position would be about $2.2 million. So looking at the P&L, if this was a business, y'all would have made a slight profit of about $100,000. Revenues were about 5.9, almost $6 million. The expenses were slightly less than that. So that's the government-wide statements. Just one other thing of note on the next slide, just to kind of give you a breakdown of your debt. You'll see debt was about $4.3 million at year end, and that's a decrease of about $400,000. So y'all just continued your normal principal payments. So, and then debt service for this coming year is $364,000. So that kind of includes long-term debt. And then go on to the next slide. We'll see just one other. I've talked about this briefly when I was talking about fund balance and why you want to have a healthy fund balance. But the pandemic, just to remind you, I mean, it's going to adversely affect, I would imagine, the operations and possibly your liquidity and your fund balance in this coming year, and it's just a matter of time until it recovers and the economy starts recovering. So, but I imagine it will impact certainly your hospitality taxes. Y'all seen that already impacted, maybe property taxes and some of the other revenue sources, business licenses and fees. So anyway, so that kind of concludes the look at a real brief overview of the financial statements. Looking at the next slide, you'll see that we did, on the compliance front, we kind of look at your internal controls as part of the audit, and we had no findings, no significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses were noted this year. So everything looked good there. And so we appreciate all the help that Michelle and her staff give us, and everything, but everything looked good there on that front. So we didn't do a single audit this year because no federal awards exceeded $750,000 in expenditures this year. So anytime, if y'all get some significant grants that exceed $750,000, we may have to do a single audit. So periodically we'll have to do one of those, but it's been a few years since we've done one. So the management letter, which y'all should have, which is this sheet right here, that contains our, the required communications to the council that the AICPA deems that we should be making as auditors and accountants. Nothing in there that I would really call your attention to. It's fairly standard, similar to what we've given in the past. So just in summary, y'all got an unmodified opinion. The audit went well. And I think the general fund and water fund are in very good shape. The sewer fund is improving, and I'd probably describe that as an adequate financial condition. So that's it, just a real brief overview.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. We appreciate your time this evening.
All right.
Another good report. It's been a challenging year, but we'll move forward and hope for a better year next year. And it is nice to know we have at least 3 times what's considered a healthy fund balance in reserve. So hopefully we'll finish out strong this year and have a good financial year next year.
All right. Thank you. And as always, just, you know, as auditors, we work for y'all. We work for council. So if y'all ever have any concerns, please let us know. We'll be out here doing interim procedures in the spring, summer, and then we come back and do our final field work in the fall. So but if y'all ever have any questions, please let us know.
Thank you, Kim. All right, at this time we'll have a presentation from Jody Culberson about a new employee wellness program.
I was using this. The bottom.
You want court testimony?
No, the other.
Please, no.
I want some court testimony.
So a few months ago, Dr. Durham came to me. I came from the city of Anderson, and there was a very successful program there. It's called the 1,000 Mile Club. And what it was a program for employees with incentives. Dr. Durham says, I'm interested in doing something on that nature for town employees to give them to get out, to start moving, to start doing some exercise, something along that lines. Y'all don't know my backstory. I used to weigh 300 pounds. I stand for about 225 right now. So it is motivational. Dropping weight. There are studies. Sorry, if you can click on to the next slide. I didn't want to bore you with all the studies, but the program is, it's not just exclusively to Anderson City. They went out, of course, into the business world. And this study right here is about 57 pages of just watching paint dry reading. But essentially what it boils down to is to get the employees motivated to moving, healthy atmosphere. And what happens is you accumulate miles. It's proven that it cuts down on health risks, days off from work, chronic diseases. People just wanting to make themselves feel better. So the plan is simple. Town employees receive miles for their efforts. It's a self-tracking system. It's set up through an Excel worksheet. Every time an employee takes a walk, run, jog, sees a doctor for a wellness checkup, they log into the spreadsheet. At the end of the month, it tallies it, and not only can they say, hey, I walked 30 miles that month, whatever, I swam, it's the benefit that they see what's going on to. And it's not a mandatory thing. It's just an incentive program that helps employees. In November, what we do is they send their tallies in to whoever, me, whoever it is, and I just need to see, and there's fitness goals. It's 250 miles, 500 miles, 1,000 miles. When they, at the certain levels, 250, 500, there's different incentives for that. If you would click to the next slide. So this is how we get the factors. If you run or walk a mile, it's a mile. Bike ride is a mile. You swim, it's 4 miles because it's harder. An hour aerobics, gym workout, you accumulate miles. You click in, and of course it's all self-paced for doing that. Everything has to be self-approved through the wellness committee. So say, like when we do our spring water run, that would be double miles. So rather than getting 3.5 miles for the run, it'd be 7 miles. So and that keeps everything in-house. I average about 40 miles a week running. I'm not Superman, I just tend to run a lot, so my numbers would be definitely higher. In the city of Anderson, it was really a source of pride to have the shirts. This is one of the higher tier, this is a 1,000-mile shirt. This is a prototype. As Dr. Burton said, this is our program. We can design it to whatever we want, but if you look to the design. This is one of the really big things at the Christmas dinner is when this stuff would be presented. You would individually call the employee up and say, congratulations, Councilman Haywood, you reached 1,000-mile club, here's your certificate. And by then it would be decided what you wanted. He decided if you wanted a button-up t-shirt or a button-up nice polo shirt. Like I said, this is a prototype, they left off the town of Williamston, but it's just a source of pride. You can click over. This is and like I said, everything's kind of in the production stages, but at the 250-mile level, you would get a gift card, a $25 gift card for Subway, go eat fresh. Walmart, you go buy your running shirt, whatever, it's Academy. It's just an incentive. At 500-mile club, you get the dry fit shirt. This is what the dry fit shirt, the athletic with the dry fit shirt. The half-day vacation, and you can choose. When you start reaching up to the 1,000 miles, then of course the incentives get a little bit better. It's a $25 gift card, half-day vacation, and dry fit. So they just kind of go through it. So at the Christmas dinner would go up, Dr. Durham would shake their hand, and it's a big deal. It's really slow to get off the ground because people are like, why do I have to do this? Well, when they kind of start seeing our incentive programs, and they get better. We can do bags, gym bags. The limit is this unlimited. I have reached out to Palmetto Armory about maybe some type of discount on letting town employees come in, if not like a whole group. Like a one-time, once a year, $2,000, and every time employee you could work out for free. He was having to look at his budget and to see what he could do, see if he could get back with me. But as of today, it has not happened. But like I said, this is our program. It can be tailored to whatever you see. Yes, it's going to cost a little money. These run about $6. This is, I think we paid $18 for this. The artwork's already set up, so there's no fee to that. Of course, then you have the gift cards and the half-day off vacation, which takes off, but it's an incentive and it works.
All right, any questions? And just so Ken knows, this would be under the employee morale line item, Ken. We already have this budgeted, so. Appreciate your presentation.
You got it first try.
Okay, I got a little presentation. We don't have all our department heads here and, to make their presentations tonight. I told them to take the night off, and but we do have a survey that I did with them, and so it is operational audit. If you click that one, Rocky.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Is that
Would
my
be.
phone? Oh, gosh, really?
She recognized
You
your
do
voice.
understand. All right, so I'm just going through this really quickly. This is real short form format. If you go to the next slide, this hopefully won't take too long. I just want to try to give everybody an idea. I did just a short form audit, short list of questions that asked each department head to gauge how they feel their department is doing. It's just a real simple question and answer. If you go ahead. And the objectives of this just to identify department head perceptions of how they think they're performing, and then report that internal performance perception to the public. So, next slide. And here's the audit questions that I gave them, and it's just 3 simple questions. Under your leadership, what are the top 3 goals you'll set for improvements in your department over the next year and over the next 5 years? And then under your leadership, what has been the 3 most important accomplishments of your department in the last year and the last 5 years? And then rate the operational condition of your department 5 years ago, 1 year ago, and now. So just kind of an inside look at how the employees think they're doing. So next slide, please. So the most important goals that they had set for the next year under administration that want to remodel and update the front office, streamline internal procedures, and make another hire to go back to being fully staffed. In the water department, they're wanting to install a 6-inch water line from 1st Street to Mahaffey Road to improve fire hydrant pressure. This came up with our ISO audit recently. The sewer department, they want a new sewer line from Mahaffey Road to 1st Street, which is a already approved grant project that we'll be taking on, and also complete the approved injection grouting project in the Brookdale community that council approved earlier this year. In the streets department, they want to replace their tractor and bush hog, which is a little bit undersized for what we have to do with that equipment, and continue ACTC paving projects around town. The fire department is wanting to build a 3-bay building at the rear of the station to store the 1936 fire engine, the air trailer, and a reserve fire engine. And the police department wants to offer incentives for education, longevity, and development of specialized skill sets to retain and recruit good officers. They want to complete their SCPAC accreditation and apply for community police officer grants. And I also want to increase community engagement activities. And Parks and Rec Department wants to get the recreational property transferred from the school district to the town so we can have better fields for our youth athletes, and also get an approved plan for park improvements at all of our parks. On their 5-year goals, most important goals, administration wants to upgrade existing merchant's credit card machine to integrate into our existing software, and also update phone numbers and contact information in our customer accounts. The Water Department wants to replace water lines on East and West 1st through 5th Streets and relocate the meters to the front of those homes, and also replacement of a water service truck. These are some of the older water lines in our community. Under sewer, they want to continue the injection grouting program and improve or reroute sewer lines going through the park. Under the streets, they want a new packer for garbage service. And fire department wants to purchase a frontline fire engine to replace the 1992 KME fire engine and place the 1992 KME fire engine into reserve use. And also they have a goal to lower their ISO rating from a Class 3 to a Class 2. In the police department, they want to implement a car replacement program and increase manpower. And in our parks and recreation, they want to redevelop the fields behind the municipal center to provide good facilities for our youth athletes and improve the fields at Brookdale for better use and parking. Okay, next slide. So success factors, the most important accomplishments that our department heads have identified in the last year. Administration successes have been upgraded administration computers and servers. They implemented a new website, started live streaming our council meetings on YouTube and Facebook. In the water department, we saw small water line upgrades in multiple areas across town to increase water pressure and replace service lines, some as old as 85 years old. currently working to repurpose our old water plant for a major economic development project. And in sewer, we have a very successful injection grouting pilot study that was performed, approved by council earlier this year. And they want, that project decreased inflow and infiltration to almost zero in the study area. Also, our CDBG grant of Belton Drive sewer trunk line replacement is nearing completion. And the streets department, we have had the replacement of the Minor Street culvert replacement, which was at the bottom of the hill at the creek, the Madison Street culvert replacement, the Lee Street culvert replacement, and Minor Street sidewalk project. Had a replacement of a flatbed for the leaf and limb pickup, and currently in the process of replacing about 75 street signs. A storm line replacement at Bigby and Park Street was completed, and multiple paving projects across town. In the fire department, their accomplishments over the last year was increased the ISO score from 70 to 74, which they're still at a class 3, but they're increasing their score. And if they get to an 80, that would be a class 2. Facility upgrades included painting, floor replacement. They had a 75-inch television to monitor weather and news events, replaced training room HVAC system, and replaced one vehicle, and they also painted the antenna tower. Accomplishments of the police department, they got their SCDPS grant for $71,717, a body camera grant for $25,183. They became a member of the South Carolina Police Accreditation Coalition to improve quality and delivery of police services to citizens. They recovered over $100,000 from related crimes. They have added a full-time detective position, and arrests were made on 5 criminal sexual misconduct cases. In Parks and Recreation, that department installed over 1,500 square feet of sod in the park. They had installation of rubber mulch to improve safety in the play areas, upgraded basketball goals. They completed stump removal throughout the entire park, and had new cameras installed. They refurbished also the Gene R. Taylor walking bridge. And in the last 5 years, these departments have had some important accomplishments. In the last 5 years, the administration has completed implementation of the radio read water meter billing software. That's a mouthful. New monitoring cameras, and they cleared out old records and started an archiving system. We completed $75,000 upgrade to the auditorium space. We also did painting and upgrades to all of our community meeting areas. In the water department, had installation of radio read meters for the entire town, had new 8-inch water supply on Brock Lane for Gatewood community, and we replaced key valves in our system and made some other valve additions to help controlling our system. Also, fire hydrant upgrades and replacements have been completed, and demolition of the old water tank site was completed for the new Pocket Park. In the sewer department, they had CDB grant projects to replace trunk lines at Milliken and Academy, Milliken to Academy and Pinecrest project. Both of those together were over $1.5 million in sewer improvements. The streets department, construction of new Brock Lane entrance into Gatewood happened in the last 5 years. Replacement of Minor Street Bridge was another project we brought into town. Cleanup and grading of the old Gatewood entrance, and demolition of a failed storm drain line off of Circle Street, and also multiple paving projects across the town. The fire department was able to secure a one-day-time firefighter, and has added a ladder truck and also the purchase of air packs, some of their most important accomplishments. And in the police department, they received over $400,000 in goods and services ranging from bulletproof vests, COVID-19 safety gear, and replacement vehicles. They created a culture of community policing, and they're operating within a balanced budget every year. In the Parks and Recreation Department, they built a recreational program with over 800 sign-ups. They've got installation of a handicap swing and sidewalk entrance for that swing. Also, picnic grills repaired and refinished. Pet stations are installed. New Mineral Spring walking trail has been completed. New Brookdale Park sidewalk, a new grade drive shelter, adopt a rest stop benches throughout the town in partnership with Envision Williamston, upgraded the fence around the National Guard tank, and expanded the amphitheater stage. Also added a new playground for the children, new LED Christmas decorations, and the new Chris Coleman Pocket Park. So under their perception of how their departments are performing, 5 years ago, 1 year ago, and now, with 10 being the worst and 1 being the best, you can see each department is showing a perception of improvement over the last 5 years and even over the last year. So it's not that we don't have a vision to make more improvements. You saw their goals for improvements in the presentation, but each department head does feel like that the town operations are improving within their departments. Next slide. So in summary, each department does have what I feel is an impressive record of accomplishments. They're valuable to the quality of life of our citizens and the progress of our town. I believe that each department has clearly defined goals that will provide for a continued high level of service to our citizens and position our town to be a sustainable municipality. And each department is perceived as demonstrating progressive improvement and interdepartmental collaboration. So in conclusion of this little questionnaire that we did, I think your departments have a record of accomplishment. I think your departments are dedicated to serving our citizens, and they have a passion to continue building a foundation for quality growth and great community services. Last slide. So why is this important? It's important because the performance of our departments determines the quality of services we deliver to our citizens. So on behalf of our department heads, I want to appreciate you guys listening to that presentation today. So at this time, we will have Mr. Richard Greer and Mr. Chris Paulson to make a presentation to council on a proposed economic development project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, for having us here this evening. I'm going to give a little background, then let Chris talk about some of the details of his vision. I've been working for about 18 months to 2 years with the mayor and also with Envision Williamston, the group there, because we believe that this area, and specifically Williamston, can be sort of the heart of the new upstate. As people move in, as the river becomes more recreationally capable, as we get the cooperation out of the Central Rivers Power that owns the dams, that both counties are working on it, we felt like this was the where to be. So with that in mind, we started working in Piedmont Pelzer and here in Williamston looking for opportunities. And we have looked at several. There have been several things, and it's just like any other business or things. You got to look at a lot before the right one pops on. So we've had fun doing it. We think that the attitude in this of the community and the people here is the right kind of attitude to be doing business in. And just by happenstance, that same period of time, I've been working with Chris Paulson and a group of his investors about putting a brewery, restaurant, a large commercial space in a very unique way. So we're not just going to get an old building and throw in a tank and say, man, we're great beer brewers or anything like that. That's not what the goal is. It's to create a unique situation where people will actually travel to it. So with that in mind, we've looked at, I'll let him tell you the trauma that we've been through with several sites. And DOT stopped one, and the Greenwood Nature Park stopped one. And anyway, there's always been red flags around some of these. But one day I was talking to him, and I said, well, you know, I've been looking at the old water plant in Williamston. I said, it looks like a mess. I mean, it's got, windows are broken and the graffiti all over it. And I said, it looks kind of messy, but I think its bones are good since most of it is 36-inch concrete.
Yeah.
So those are pretty good bones. And I said, basically, now those are goldfish tanks, because those goldfish are swimming around in the tank. So I brought Chris out there and said, Chris, what can you vision here? And he said, I don't know. So anyway, we started working on it, and it was, and thinking about it, and so Chris finally put his team on it. And he's got some pretty creative people. And they came up with what I think is a great idea. I think it's more important that they think what is a great idea. And that what you in this community would say, this is something that we want. This is we can make this right here in town. It's something we want to be able to offer more different kind of options for our citizens. And so one of the reasons that we're here tonight is that we're now going to start doing a lot of work. And by a lot of work, I'm talking about engineering, checking out, making sure that the loads that are there, with the structure there can carry the loads, looking at how the creek can be cleaned up and utilized in some way. So there's a lot of work going on. And whenever that happens, we always feel like it's better to be transparent and say, this is what we're looking at. So for that reason, I'm going to turn it over to Chris and let him tell you what they've come up with so far. And then when he finishes, I want to come back and talk about a couple things that I think would be helpful at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Richard.
Hi, I appreciate the time. My name is Chris Paulson. I'm Managing Director of Craft Beer Partners, LLC. That is a group of investors and myself that we've been searching for probably about 3 years now for a unique destination restaurant brewery, kind of like if you've been to Asheville area and seen Sierra Nevada, any of those type of brewery, that's what we're trying to do. We're looking for a destination brewery that has a restaurant and other commercial establishments that are in conjunction with it. They're all like-minded businesses that are catering towards that craft beer, that craft restaurant, that foodie type of person that is willing to come and spend quite a bit of time, drink good beverages, eat good food, and have a good time, and spend quite a bit of money and increase our tax dollars, or increase the tax revenue in the city. Richard's right, we've been looking for quite some time. We've been looking in the Greenville area. We really, the last 2 years, have been concentrating in this area I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Adam. As you know, the lady behind you. Roberta's right. This area is going to explode. And Richard and my group believe that wholeheartedly. So we've been looking in the Piedmont, towards down the Saluda River area for a number of years, and he's right, we've gone to Piedmont. We went to that project. We spent about 6 to 9 months on that project, and it came to a point where we just said, no, budget's too much, or there's issues, we had to move on. We moved to Pelzer. We looked at the lower mill there. We spent about a year doing that. We did a bunch of tests and looked at that, and it came down to a point where it came out. We've looked at a couple other spots in Malden and everything, and then about a month ago, Richard came to me and said, hey, I want you to take a look at this spot in Williamston. And I was like, okay, I've been to Williamston a bunch of times, and I know it fairly well. There's no mill down there. What is it? And so he takes me over here, and we go over there, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, wow, there's the park. I know the park's right over there. I see some people walking through here. Got through it, and went over and looked at the creek, and about an hour after, I was like, wow, Richard, this is nice. We could do something here. It's got a good approximation to town. It's good walkable. It's got the park there, and then after meeting back, and he said there's 60 acres at park and stuff over here. I'm like, wow, really enjoyed it. It looks great. So I think it was a couple of weeks ago, we had my design team come down and take a look. I had my contractors come out and take a look at the building, and they said the building looks great. We've got some issues and this and that, but nothing that we haven't run across before that we haven't been able to solve. So I told Richard, let's move it a little bit further. And so we we spent a little money, and we had our design team put together what it potentially could look like. And this is a 30,000-foot view. It most likely will not look like this, but to give everyone just kind of a sense of the vision that I have, because what we're wanting to do is build a place that people want to come and spend 4 hours, have 2 beers or a drink within those 4 hours, eat a meal, bring their family, meet other people, commiserate and spend time together as a community, because that's what we are. So we feel like this has a good sense of what we want to do.
Wow.
So you have, here the backs are here, and we've cut, our game plan is to cut through the backs all the way through, so we'll use the ground floor as a base. And then up on top, we'll create a deck. So then we'll have seating and space for people to play games, eat inside, eat outside. They can go on top if the day's nice. If there's no rain, they can spend it up top. If it is raining, well, we still have the downstairs here. The production brewery will be inside the building as well as the kitchen. And all the commercial and production stuff will be inside the building right now. We're not actually sure if that's possible yet. I haven't had my structural engineer come through the building and do all that. That costs quite a bit of money, and I don't want to do that yet until I know that the town and the city wants me to actually come in and put a brewery and a restaurant and some other commercial buildings that might be able to support some other restaurants or some other things. Okay. Timeline for this sort of thing? Well, won't know that until we actually get it under contract and get some engineers and some architects and things going in there. But I'm fairly confident that once we get the project undergo, we could be open within 2 years.
Wow.
Possibly sooner if we can get some things going. Other than that, I think it's a great opportunity. I'm really looking forward to getting started if the city and the town approve.
All right.
Any other questions or anything I can answer for you?
No, it looks wonderful. I can't, can you guys see a little closer view back there? What does everybody think about it? Yeah. Adam, you might have to revise some of your plans.
It's in Berkeley. It just goes right to it.
Where's you want to add anything?
The one only thing I want to say is, this is obviously, there are other parts of this. The pump house, the old pump house, sits right across, right in.
It's over in this general
Yeah.
area here.
Well, it's a nice building. That could be a separate restaurant. In other words, if we're specializing in food that goes along with wings and pizza and all that sort of stuff, in which we want to have a fine dining place, it might go separately into another place. It could be that they would rent space in our building, or we could do something else with it there. There's some other tanks down there that one of Chris's.
Several tanks that are over here. I love those tanks. My ultimate goal would be to have a fine dining establishment here, where it would be farm to table, where we could use those greenhouse tanks.
Yeah, the drying beds. Yeah.
Use those for the restaurant so that we could, if you've ever been to, I forget the name of the restaurant, but it's over off Kingwood Drive, over there in Long, and it's a park, right? It's got a restaurant on it, and it's nice. I love that place. That's the kind of concept that we're looking here. Being a brewer, we always want to be a good stewardship to the land. So having our food grown right here and using it in the restaurant is very appealing to me. So we would definitely like to use it.
Right. And another thing that it doesn't show is there is something called a clear well.
Yeah.
That's on the end of the building there. That's about 6,800 square feet of flat cement with a 12-inch pad on it that has been totally reinforced back in the late 70s.
Yeah.
Been totally reinforced. And that brings, I'm just gonna, I know I'm not, I hope I'm not wasting your time. But
No.
as I was working on this thing, I was working with a guy that's a friend of mine from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I was telling him about this place. He said, man, that sounds perfect. I said, you don't normally get that. And so he said, that sounds perfect. I want to open a full-time shag club. And I want to turn that Clearwell into a big shag floor. And I want to have 5 contests a year. And he went on and had all this stuff. And then I said, well, how, you know, you're talking about a lot of expense here. And he said, well, I'm sure you can raise the money. So anyway, we feel like it's got a huge potential. And like Chris was saying, there's not a lot, you know, things will change as we get into it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of red flags at this point, which is good. The transportation looks good. There's some parking issues right there at the building. It's fairly small, but I think that there's some houses and some things right on the other side. If we could somehow gain possession of those and make additional parking there, then of course there's a lot of parking on across the road. And then but so far, I mean, the transportation side looks good. So a lot of the early edition flags that we haven't seen yet. But the only thing I want to do is, right now, and I think I mentioned this to you, we are going to have a phase 1 environmental done. I can't imagine anybody put a water plant on top of a problem. Okay? I can't imagine, but you just never know. So we are going to have a phase 1 done on it. And so if anybody sees it, most of the time, phase 1s don't require site visits. They're just looking at records.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, I think it's great. We think it's got a lot of potential.
Yeah.
We haven't seen a lot of red flags that we've run across so far, but then again, I haven't had my full team and my engineers come through yet. So I'm cautiously optimistic right now that this might be a place where I'll find a home.
Well, we're certainly happy to hear this presentation tonight. It's a tremendous announcement for our town of Williamston. Of course, we've got a lot of details to work through with council and talking about the property. But this has been a problem property for the town. We've had consistent, recurring vandalism and destruction at that site. A lot of activities going on that we just don't want to have as a town. It's been a crime area. And this is something that would bring a destination amenity to our town. It would bring jobs to our town. It brings upscale dining to our town. Brings a niche business that we absolutely do not have here in town. So it's got a lot of pluses. I'm pulling for you guys. I really hope this goes forward, and I'm sure that council looks forward to a discussion on this and how we can collaborate together to make this happen for our town.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chris. All right, well, with that, that ends our presentations for this evening. Pretty exciting night, but we do have a little business that we need to get done. So with that, we'll move on to the old business, which is a second reading on an ordinance allocating funding for indigent defense. And that ordinance was passed on first reading, and we have it back for second reading. And we'll make a motion to have that ordinance approved on second reading. It is entitled, "An Ordinance Allocating Funding for Indigent Defense and Amending the Budget to Reflect the Same." Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Councilman Haygood. Any discussion on that? I almost feel compelled to say that we're all reluctant to do this, to perform this business evening, but we know it's a necessity, and so we will perform our duty. All in favor? And we have none opposed. And moving on to new business, we do have a first reading on the ordinance to approve an agreement with Scout Development LLC. And I don't think I have a copy of that ordinance in my packet. We'd like to read that by title. Thank you, Chris. And so we'll have Make a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance. That's the agreement, that's the contract. Thanks. Make a motion to approve on first reading. This will require 2 readings. An ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing approval of a development agreement and transfer of real property to Scout Realty Group, LLC. Do we have a second on that?
Second for discussion.
We have a second by Councilman Burgess. And discussion.
Mayor, I've talked with several local developers who also took a look at this and said it looks like a good deal for the city. Obviously, there's a lot of information that we want to know, that I want to know prior to the second reading and final reading, but certainly excited to see it at least have the opportunity to have some discussion on this particular project.
Continuing discussion, I would like to plan maybe a special work session where council can sit down and go through this contract with Attorney Cole and possibly representative from Scout Realty Group. And I think that this is a new, let me say that we're all excited, I believe I can speak for everybody, that we're all excited for new homes and new rooftops in Williamston. We know that this is the pathway to the grocery store and everything else that everybody thinks is eluding Williamston. But rooftops are economic development for Williamston. So, but this is a new process for us in every way. So I would say in discussion that we absolutely will schedule a special work session or make this our work session coming up, depending on scheduling for everybody. So make sure we can go through this very thoroughly and make sure that this has got everything that we're looking for. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed. To pass on first reading. Thank you very much. At this time, we will entertain a motion for a appointment to the Election Commission. We have an open seat.
So moved.
And
Second.
Mr. Councilman Haygood,
Yes.
would you have a candidate in mind?
Yes, I do. I'd like to take this opportunity to present my nominee for this position. It's a young man that I've watched grow up here in Williamston, some 49 years that he's been a resident here, with the exception of 4 of those years where he was committed to serve in the Navy for 4 years. He's a 1990 graduate of Palmetto High School. After his 4 years of the Navy, came home and came back here to Williamston. Spent 12 of his years as a realtor, 10 years as a loan officer, and 9 years as an election officer. So that lets me know that he is definitely a young man who conducts business and conducts business well. So I think that he would be a prime candidate for this vacant position.
Do you have any other candidates in mind?
Who is he?
And I'm sorry, please forgive me. And I was thinking everyone should know him. I'm sorry. His name is C.J. Slade. His grandmother on his mother's side, Miss Mildred. Excuse me, Miss Mildred she also worked as a poll officer as well. And then also his grandmother on his father's side, I think we all know. Miss Slade, we see her in the park all the time, so therefore he's not a stranger to Williamston. I think that he would be a great candidate. And he's here this evening. If you would stand, CJ.
CJ, thank you for coming this evening. We appreciate you offering yourself for service. Do you have any other nominees? Okay, we'll make a motion that we approve an appointment of Mr. C.J. Slade to our Election Commission. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Councilman Harvell. All in favor? Thank you for your service, Mr. Slade. We'll be getting in touch with you. Michelle, you can get information to Mr. Slade about the requirements of his office. Thank you. Without any other business, before we do adjourn, I would like to say thank you to our guests this evening, all of you, but especially to our friends and colleagues in Pelzer. Councilman Eddie Waits and Councilman Mike Matthews. Appreciate you guys being here with us this evening. We hope we were up to your standards tonight. If we did anything wrong or you can help us improve anyway, don't fail to let us know. We all need to work together, and we appreciate you being here. We've got a great relationship with our folks at Pelzer, and we want that to continue in every way. So with that said, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second? And we got thirds? All in favor? We stand adjourned. Thank you for coming this evening.